Welcome to Just Add Technology. I'm Cam, let's get wired. So Apple's final event of the year, the One More Thing event, has come and gone. And it was no surprise to anybody that's been keeping up with the Apple news what they were going to announce. Apple promised the first Apple Silicon Macs by the end of this year, and it was here that they were unveiled. Apple Silicon, for those who have better things to do with their time than consuming tech companies' marketing material, is Apple's giant leap into the world of making their own computer processors. Apple aren't completely inexperienced in the silicon chip game though. They've been designing A-series chips for their phones and iPads for more than a decade now. Not to mention S-series chips for their watches and W-series chips for smart speakers as well. The November 2020 One More Thing event saw Apple finally give nomenclature to their new Apple Silicon computer chip with the birth of the M series. The M1 is Apple's first computer, or Mac, processor, and in the words of John Turnus, VP of Hardware Engineering at Apple, has been
optimized for our most popular low-power systems
and is part of
a family of chips.
The move to Apple Silicon sees the beginning of the end of the 14-year relationship with Intel, a company that had their own family of chips with the i3, i5, i7 and i9 all finding their way into various iterations of Macs over the years. So it makes sense that Apple start their family of chips with the M1, the apparent baby of the family. The M1 is going into the entry-level Macs with the MacBook Air, 13-inch MacBook Pro and Mac Mini being the first to disembark the SS Intel. But don't for 1 minute assume that anybody can put baby in the corner. There were an avalanche of graphs to prove that the M1 chips mean business, with a best of both worlds approach to power efficiency and performance. At just 10 watts of power consumption, the M1 has 2 times the performance of the latest PC laptop chip. With Apple not wanting to upset their outgoing CPU supplier Intel or GPU supplier AMD, you can make your own mind up on what the latest PC laptop chip is, but it's a big claim nonetheless. Talking of the performance of the M1 chip at 10 watts of power consumption, it was mentioned that this is
the thermal envelope of a MacBook Air.
Does this suggest that the new fanless MacBook Airs will be firmly throttled from achieving the upper limits of the M1's potential? Let me know in the comments how you read into that statement. Apple Silicon is a genuinely watershed moment in computing because these chips aren't just a replacement to your traditional CPU chip. These are SoCs, System on a Chip chips, that take a whole host of separate parts that make up the inner workings of a Mac and strap them all together into one big chip. In fact, not even that big because, like the most recently introduced A14 in iPhones and iPads, the M1 uses a 5 nanometer process, which basically just means they can fit more transistors into a smaller area than ever before. The M1 SoC incorporates the CPU, I/O and Thunderbolt controllers, secure enclave, RAM and GPU into one neat little package, which means they can all talk to each other more efficiently than ever before, and also renders any hope of third-party upgradability or repairability dead on arrival. In the past, one of the defining characteristics between the processors in MacBook Airs and MacBook Pros has been the Pro's higher clock speeds and turbo speeds. This has always meant that the MacBook Pro deserved its higher price tag, not only for its extra hardware and features, but because it can push the envelope a little bit further with mightier processors too. However, Apple has decided to put the M1 in the Air, 13-inch Pro, and Mac Mini, which means that the Pro has lost one of its key selling features. The MacBook Air does have its own interesting quirk though. There are 2 tiers of Air. The second tier has an M1 chip with 8-core CPU and 8-core GPU as advertised and as found in the other 2 Apple Silicon Macs. The first tier of MacBook Air, however, has an M1 chip with 8-core CPU and 7-core GPU, which, considering the hardware surrounding the chip is the same between the 2 tiers, does raise questions as to why they'd kneecap their own chip. If performance lives up to Apple's claims, however, which their tech often does, all of the Apple Silicon powered Macs are going to have phenomenal performance. Due to the efficiency of the M1, there are also going to be some very big, or should I say long, battery life claims, with the new MacBook Air boasting up to 18 hours battery life, and the MacBook Pro up to 20. Yep, 20. There were a raftful of rumours of redesigns for this event, with the iMac at the front of the queue, but the iMac wasn't touched. I wonder if COVID-19 related production delays have pushed a whole host of rumoured products such as the 21.5-inch iMac redesign, AirTags and AirPods Studio, or possibly Studio Pods, back to Apple's March event, where we're hoping to see the 2021 iPad Pro and iPad Mini 6. The Mac Mini, MacBook Air and Pro had slight updates alongside their shiny new Apple Silicon processors, but no redesigns were to be seen, and to be honest, weren't particularly needed yet. The Air and Pro had updated image signal processing on their FaceTime cameras, but haven't benefited from the 1080p FaceTime camera only seen so far on the 2020 27-inch iMac. The MacBook Pro and Mac Mini lose the option for 4 USB-C ports and are now limited to just 2 USB-C ports. The Mac Mini also loses the option for a 10 gigabit Ethernet, limited to a standard gigabit Ethernet. I suspect that these I/O limitations are bandwidth constraints of the M1 chip, which we may see lifted when we're introduced to the next member of the M series family later down the line. Like, comment, subscribe, and take care. I'll see you in the comments.